Critiques of modern monetary theory, analysis and response. 1. Defining modern monetary theory, MMT. Modern monetary theory, MMT, posits that governments issuing their own sovereign currencies can engage in deficit spending to achieve full employment and increase household savings with minimal macroeconomic downside. According to MMT, fiscal spending is not constrained by revenues, but by inflationary thresholds and resource availability. This view challenges traditional economic assumptions, positioning government spending as a precursor to both taxation and private saving. Footnote: this section introduces MMT as a heterodox theory that reorients the role of fiscal policy and challenges revenue-constrained models of government finance. 2. Foundational disagreement, origins of money. Critics of MMT reject its foundational view on the origin of money, which stems from the Chartalist tradition, that money is a legal construct, created by the state for the purpose of taxation. Opponents argue for a commodity-based explanation rooted in market evolution. Historically, objects such as cigarettes in prisons or cryptocurrencies in collapsing states have functioned as money absent sovereign enforcement. These critics view such organic monetary emergence as evidence that MMT's legal theory of money fails to explain real-world behavior. Footnote: this section highlights the ideological rift between Chartalist and commodity-based theories of money, with critics rejecting the legal origins of currency. 3. Inflation as a monetary phenomenon. A principal critique of MMT is its approach to inflation. Detractors assert that inflation is a direct result of excessive increases in the money supply. Historical episodes such as those in Zimbabwe, the Weimar Republic, and Venezuela are cited as illustrative of this mechanism. Even non-state causes, such as the California gold rush, are referenced to show that increases in base money supply, regardless of origin, generate price inflation. MMT is criticized for downplaying this relationship and substituting it with outdated Keynesian models. Footnote: this section critiques MMT's perceived underestimation of the causal relationship between monetary expansion and inflation. 4. Misinterpretation of idle resources and full employment. MMT theorists argue that government spending can mobilize idle resources without causing inflation, provided the economy has not reached full employment. Critics argue that this premise is both empirically unfounded and conceptually flawed. Drawing on classical and Austrian economic critiques, opponents assert that full employment is neither a definable nor desirable condition. They posit that economic evolution inherently requires labor market flexibility and transitional unemployment, making the pursuit of perpetual full employment counterproductive. Footnote: this section challenges the feasibility and desirability of full employment as a policy target, disputing MMT's reliance on Keynesian idle resource theory. 5. Relative versus nominal price movements and the Cantillon effect. MMT critics emphasize the importance of real prices over nominal values in understanding inflation's redistributive effects. When new money enters the economy, it does not raise prices evenly. Early recipients gain purchasing power at the expense of later recipients and those on fixed incomes. This phenomenon, known as the Cantillon effect, causes a distortion in wealth and demand patterns. Critics argue that MMT ignores this staggered inflationary process, mistakenly assuming homogeneous outcomes across the economy. Footnote: this section explains how inflation differentially benefits early recipients of new money and creates structural inequalities in wealth distribution. 6. Real-world example, purchasing power and relative exchange ratios. A detailed comparison of wages and prices from 1971 to the present reveals that while nominal prices have increased, real purchasing power for certain goods has improved. Using metrics such as McDonald's wages versus the price of eggs and televisions, critics of MMT demonstrate how nominal inflation obscures real economic trends. They assert that analyzing exchange ratios over time provides a more accurate understanding of economic well-being than aggregate price indices. Footnote: This section uses real-world data to show that relative prices and exchange ratios are more meaningful than aggregate inflation statistics. 7. The GDP equation and the MMT logic chain. Modern monetary theorists often cite an identity derived from GDP accounting, where government spending minus taxation equals net private saving minus investment. Critics contend that this formulaic rearrangement of national accounting identities lacks explanatory power. It confuses correlation with causation and abstracts away from the complexities of real markets. They argue that equating government deficits with private savings fails to account for the distortive effects of fiscal policy on prices, investment incentives, and long-term wealth. Footnote: this section critiques the misuse of national accounting identities in MMT, asserting that they are descriptive and not causal models. 8. Inflation as a covert redistribution scheme. Critics further argue that inflation induced by deficit-financed public spending disproportionately harms savers, particularly those on fixed incomes. When governments pay wages through monetary expansion, early recipients, often government employees or contractors, receive more valuable dollars than later users. This covert redistribution shifts wealth from the financially prudent to politically connected actors. According to critics, far from being benign or stimulative, inflationary policies act as regressive wealth transfers masked by macroeconomic jargon. Footnote: this section portrays inflation as a stealth tax that erodes savings and redistributes wealth from the general public to politically favored groups. 9. Conclusion: MMT as ideological rebranding. Opponents conclude that modern monetary theory is not a new paradigm but a recycled set of interventionist policies cloaked in unfamiliar terminology. They assert that MMT merely rebrands inflationary deficit spending as sophisticated policy and uses complex accounting identities to mask redistribution. In this view, MMT appeals to political actors seeking justification for expansive government programs, rather than offering credible economic solutions grounded in market fundamentals. Footnote: this section concludes that MMT represents ideological repackaging of discredited economic practices under a veneer of technical legitimacy.